we just got off of our episode with Leah, who is a Bay Area native. She'd recently graduated from UCLA and majored in gender studies, multiracial, multicultural. And it was fun because Leah was talking about detoxing from her long academic journey. So we had tons of fun. Leah was an intern on our podcast for a few weeks, and we got to know her in that capacity. And it was awesome to talk to her within the context of our podcast. So hi, Tamsin.
Hi, Paige.
How is everything?
Good. I love Leah. I mean, I didn't, even though she worked with us on a podcast, we have such short amount of time with these UCLA interns. And like, I felt like I didn't really get to know who she really was until she interviewed me for her class. And she asked like incredible, thoughtful questions. And then we were able to just have a conversation about our life. And then having her on a guest was just awesome, just to like get to know her more, because she just like, her life is starting, like she just graduated.
Right. Her whole life is ahead of her.
Yeah. And like, it made me think about like, wow, like I remember when I was her age. It sounds so old. But I remember her age, and it's like, but I think, she's like, she comes from a different generation. So it's like a totally different outlook, What came up for you when you were talking to Leah?
There was like, one of the last questions was asking about the Bay Area culture versus the LA culture.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a lot of close friends that ended up in LA either for college or in their careers. A few
have you spent time in LA?
Yes. Okay. I've never lived there, but I've visited friends, and some of my friends have changed from living there and some have not. So I just didn't know how much of the stereotypes were true. But then to hear Leah speak about in LA, just the way that people like to show off designer things and dress a certain way and talk about who knows who and talk about like celebrity encounters and relationships, like that just sounded so exhausting to me. And so like, right? I don't know. So that's something that like I just kept thinking about afterward. I was like, I can't imagine what that's like, even just going on a walk and having to like feel like extra pressure on your walk. I don't know. I could just be like over romanticizing like what she said versus like what I see on TV and like mashing it all together in like a really ugly way. But that was strange to me. But you seem to kind of understand what she was talking about because of your time in New York City and other big cities.
Yeah, but New York is so different.
Yeah.
I mean, New York is similar in terms of LA, that it is about connections and who you know. But I think like real New Yorkers don't care. Like we don't give a shit about anything. Like I don't give a shit who you know or what you know. And so there's always that like cool factor, like we're better than you. Like it doesn't matter, like money doesn't matter, fame doesn't matter. I think the newer New Yorkers, that's what they really are obsessed with. But like old school New Yorkers, because there's so little of us, and I don't even live there anymore, but there's so little of old school New Yorkers in New York that it's like, when you grow up like in that city, it's not like you take it. I think, yeah, you do take it for granted that you grow up as a kid in this incredible city. Like this is your playground.
Right.
But when I went to LA for the first time, when I was like 15 or 16, I went there for a program, like a summer program. And I was like, this is a whole other world. Like this is not, New Yorkers don't like LA. If you're a New Yorker, it's very hard to live in LA. And I think LAers, New York is grimy and dirty and urban. But I think LA culture sounds a little like Korean culture.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so spot on.
Don't hate me, Koreans. Don't come at me in my DMs. But all about designer, all about, what handbag, you have, what shoes you have, all about plastic surgery, where it's so normalized. Like, I think
Mhm.
Korean culture is still Asian. So it's like there is that, like, you're not going to have like little kids get plastic surgery, but that doesn't mean that you nobody talks about it. Like as a kid, everyone talks about it.
Right.
But um it's like I think the thing that hit me was like the plastic surgery and like the fillers and Botox is just so normal. It's like saying like, I'm going to yoga, I'm getting my lip fillers in.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
so
that scares
that
me a little.
right. And then what about what's the in Seattle? That's
Oh.
really different, right? It's definitely more like outdoorsy, Patagonia, North Face type.
Yeah, but I guess you have a little bit
But
of
there's
that.
tech money.
You have a little bit of that, like fillers and plastic surgery, because we have like, we've got rich Asians, which is like something, rich tech Asians, which is something I wasn't like aware of. So like there are places like Bellevue and like it's here. But I think also the weather, like in LA, it's warm. So like your
Yeah.
body matters, right?
Right.
Because you're wearing all these skimpy clothes because it's hot outside. But I don't know. I kept thinking about that too. Like if that was the pressure to look a certain way, that would be really hard. Because in New York, that's the thing. You can just go out in your pajamas and go to the grocery store. Nobody cares. But in
Mhm.
LA, you probably can't do that. In Korea, you definitely can't do that. And just it is a lot of pressure and of how you're supposed to look. And yeah, just I don't know. It's scary. I don't know why it scares me, because it's like, whatever, do whatever you want to your body. But
Mhm.
I get scared at the thought like that could possibly be me being so obsessed with how I look.
I see. I always think of those things as like a barrier, putting up a protection barrier between like you and society or you and your friend or your loved one or work. I always feel like in Hawaii, we're so casual. And when people get really dressed up, and this goes like across the board, no matter where you are, but when you get dressed up, I feel like you have a different persona. Um, and so immediately like a barrier comes up or like a wall comes up and you're no longer interacting with just that person. You're interacting with that person and their handbag or and their lots of makeup and their really nice clothes. And it just shifts the dynamic. And for me personally, who's so sensitive to connection, I love those things to come down and come off so that I can like really connect with someone. And I think too, and you probably have, more to say as a face reader, but when people are also doing a lot of cosmetic procedures, I get the same feeling. I feel like they're
Barriers.
just kind of, yes, they're putting a
Mm,
lot of things in between who they really are and then the outside world and how they interface with it. And I notice it
yeah.
all the time in clinic.
Oh,
When patients come in.
interesting.
Yeah. And I recently had this, she's a bride and she was coming in because she wanted to do facial rejuvenation and microneedling. She was really interested in it, but she had all the work done, face and body, and we just couldn't connect. We couldn't hit it off. I felt like whatever I would say she wasn't really landing anywhere with her. And
How old is she?
she never came back. Late 20s, early 30s.
Uh-huh. Well, late 20s. I mean, that's the crazy thing. I was like on Instagram and like I saw this girl, she's like 21, 22, getting Botox. And I was like, but why?
Mm-hmm.
like, like how could you
Right.
possibly, why would you need it at that
Right.
young age?
Well, but the thing is the marketing now, they're marketing it for quote unquote
Prevention.
prevention. They're like, if you get it now, the wrinkles will never develop. And then
Yeah,
you
but
just
then
keep
for the
getting
rest
it.
of your life, you're supposed to do
Exactly.
less time for
Exactly.
this.
But do you feel the same way? Do you kind of like, what I was sharing about that boundary or barrier that people are putting up I feel like is up when they get a lot of work done or dress a certain way.
See, with dressing, I love, maybe because I grew up with people who are in fashion, that it's like, it was very mixed. Like you wear high end with low end. It's like whatever looks good, that's fashion, you know? And that to me has always been fashion. Like I can't stand when people are like so label heavy. You know, I had a friend, ex-wife, man, she was such a label whore, like, and so snotty about it for everything. And I mean, it's gonna sound so bitchy, but she wasn't even that cute. So it's like, what are you starting to spend all this money for? Like, you're not even this cute. But like just looking down on people because they're not wearing labels, and then like obsessed with handbags. I don't understand Asians with handbags. I don't get it. Like I don't really don't get it. Like I look at handbags, I'm like, cool. Okay, yeah. But like, you know, like Asians like collect them, like,
Yeah, right.
right. And so, but what I love when people dress up, because I do like that you get to see this other side of them. And I like that part of dressing up too. And you do walk a certain different way, and you do act a certain different way. And I love that. And I love it when they're still as real. It's not like they're a different person. It's just a different aspect of who they are. And I get to see that, and they're still real. But I hear you when you say like there are those people that just, you know, they turn into a completely different person in a
Right.
more negative way. And then with you know, with face reading, it's like people, if you change the bone structure of your face, that has more of an impact on your Tao, because you're changing the water element. You're changing your Jing
Right.
physically, right? And so with that, I have a lot more empathy or like open-mindedness about it, because it's like, I don't know, maybe you're born into this life and you're not ready to live the life that you're meant to have. And that's your choice, because nothing is by fate, everything is destiny. And so you can choose to change your nose or your jawline because you're not comfortable with being a leader, or being more of a masculine energy or whatever. And then to me, it's like, then you have to understand like how that's going to change your purpose in life, and then go with it. Like, you know, start your track. And to me, that is another sense of like reclaiming your face. But Botox and fillers do nothing to your face, and what it does, it makes it, it's really, I don't know what to say. It's like, the way that I was taught is you have to be much more careful about Botox and fillers, because it's giving a false illusion to the world. So, for example, it's like lip fillers are like the biggest thing, like having these plump, big lips. But in face reading, that indicates that, you know, you're a very sensual person, you're very romantic, you give gifts, like words of gifts or actual physical gifts to people. You're a very giving person. You have a lot of earth element. You're like probably a good caretaker and nourishing. But when you get those fillers, it's just a false illusion. So you're actually not anything like that, right? And then people perceive you that way, and so you start acting like that, but it drains you because that's not who you are.
Right. I also always saw it as like, or at least the patients that would come into my clinic is someone who had a lot to say and was not able to say it. And so they get these fillers to then compensate for that, to feel like they said it or they had their voice or they spoke their truth, but they really didn't. So again, that false illusion part. But you know what I'm interested in thinking about with you right now is when everyone gets the same type of look.
Yeah.
What does that do on the mass societal level if everyone's getting this exact same nose and eyes and lips?
You mean like Korea?
Yes, that's what I thought of, you know, but like, how does that affect the masses? Just like, do people really even more so develop like herd mentality? And then like, how does that, what's the ramifications down the road for those types of societies or subcultures?
I think it's interesting. It happens in, I can't speak for other Asian country, but it happens in Korea. because it is part of Asia. And if you look at the history of Korea, it's very Confucian, right? And so Confucian is all about the collective. Everybody thinks the same. There's a set of rules of how to behave in society. It's very strict, right? And so it makes sense that like that's what people are drawn to, because that's the history of the country. And you can see Asian, oh man, my favorite is Asians that grew up in Asia and their eyebrows versus Asian Americans' eyebrows.
Oh my gosh, yes. Tamsin,
Yes.
no one's brought that up before.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then our preference for the type of eyebrows. Like, I'm just looking at your brows. It's like, I can already tell you grew up in the States, or like you grew up in the West, you know, because Asian from Asia, their eyebrows, and it's not even the way they pluck it. It's like just the shape of it. It's much more, it's a line, it's linear.
Yes, right.
And that's all about like being, you know, not disrupting group mentality, you know, being more thinking about the group, thinking about the collective. And that goes into like, maybe it takes a little bit longer for you to make a decision because you're not used to thinking on your own. And in the West, it's all about like me. It's an I society, whereas in Asia, it's a we society. And yeah, that's the other thing about plastic surgery. It's like, if you're gonna get plastic surgery, like get it something that like looks good on your face, for your own face, rather than just this one size fits all, because that totally affects the mentality of a culture, I think, and a society.
Right. Well, so when you think of like LA, and I feel like the Kardashians are what everyone's aspiring for when they get plastic surgery. So like if a whole population gets that same look and body, what does that mean? Right. And like, I mean, I don't expect you to have the answers right now, but I want to talk to you about it together if we can both like think about that. But it's just really, yeah, because those features, so very big voluptuous lips, the cat eye, which we've talked about before being very problematic, these high cheekbones, this like very with the high cheekbones comes this like very dramatic like line, cheek line and jawline, and then kind of like an ethnic but really well shaped nose, and then of course like the big bust, the teeny waist, the big bottom, the thin thighs.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
like, and you know what I see? It's like now that like everyone has that look, to me, it's not attractive. Like it just seems like, okay, like, and it goes for like Korean culture too. Like my mom will show me pictures of celebrities. Do you think she's pretty? Do you think she's pretty? She does this all the time. And I'm like, no. She's like, but everyone in Korea says like she's the most beautiful. I'm like, but she looks like everybody else. Right. And then the celebrities I do like are the ones that look very different. Like their feature is it's just different. And it's like, oh, I think she's really pretty. And she's like, what? Nobody thinks she's pretty. And so with the whole Kardashian look in LA, and I just feel like I'm at first you're like, whoa, this is hot because this is just, it's a lot, right? But then when you see everyone look that way, I'm just like, but everyone looks like this. So it's not that interesting. But I'm not attracted to women. So it's like, I want to know what a guy thinks.
Oh, yeah.
That's and I think about boys growing up thinking that this is what women look like, you know? And it's like, I was listening to this other podcast with two guys, and they were talking about how younger guys don't really know what a woman's body is supposed to look like because they just grew up on Instagram. And
oh God, that's so terrifying.
Yeah. And these two guys, like, they love all different types of women's bodies, like tiny to really big. And they're like, yeah, they, you know, they're talking about guys leaving comments on girls like posts saying like, oh, look at this cellulite, it's so gross. And then two guys were like, every woman has cellulite, like that's what makes a woman, you know. Right. And like And I was like, yeah, I feel like a lot of boys are now growing up thinking that with all the filters and all of that on Instagram, like a really warped sense of what a woman's supposed to look like.
That's so scary. Because
I
we've
know you have
always
a
had
son.
that in, yeah, and we've always had that in society, but on such a smaller scale. So when we think of like Playboy in the 70s or whatever it was, there would be maybe like 3 like to 10 images. And those women back then were more curvy. And then I don't think they had the
And they
same
all look
technology.
different. Yeah, they all
Right.
looked somewhat different.
Right. And then now it's literally at your fingertips, thousands upon thousands of the exact same look because they're using the same filter. And gosh, that's really upsetting. And I didn't think about it either, like to that extent.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. I think that's made me really be more drawn to people's individual beauty. Like I met
Mhm.
somebody who I've told you about in the last week or two with a lot of stuff. And I was like, I don't think she's that beautiful, but I know society would say she's very beautiful. And I had to check with myself. I'm like, am I jealous? Is this why? And I kept thinking, like, no, I actually don't think she's that beautiful. I think she looks like everybody else. Whereas someone like Leah, I think she's gorgeous and beautiful, but she also
Yeah,
looks like the
Leah is
future.
gorgeous.
Yeah,
Yes.
she looks like the
I
future.
loved I loved how you said that. You were like all of these multi races, like this
Yeah.
is what the future human looks like.
Yeah, like you're not really supposed to be mixing DNA with the same line of your own family line. That never works out well. And like
Right.
just all different cultures. And I feel like that her generation really embraces that. They're, because they are multicultural. So they look very different from the rest of us. And I think that goes with how they think about their body, how they think about fashion, how they think. We're going back to like, how does your face impact culture and society? I think that generation, like, it impacts the way they think about the world. And we've talked about this, like, they don't think in a very binary way. How could they
Right.
if they're so multicultural?
Right. That's really interesting because I think you and I mean, you have one majority race, right? Korean, and then I only have two. And then so we can kind of pull at those features like, oh, I have this part of me is that this, like you might be like, this part of me is more northern, this part of me is more southern, and I might be like, this part of me is more Chinese, this part of me is more white. But for them, when you have so many, 4 to 5, I think you stop pulling from that narrative and you're just like, this is just me.
Yeah, like
And
Kyle's episode.
yes, and it's like, I'm these things. And that change of perspective of like, you are influencing your look versus your look is influencing you. There's this like
Yeah.
powerful thing in there
Yeah. I think
that,
also
yeah,
sorry, go.
no, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
And I think because their parents came together, like on purpose. Like, okay, so I did my 23andMe thing because I was like, all right, because my mom does not look Korean whatsoever. Even Korean people don't look. And so I wanted to know, and like, I need her to take it because sometimes the DNA doesn't come to the
Right,
kids,
right.
but she won't take it because she knows she's not. But and I was like, I expected to see Korean, Chinese. I expected to see Chinese more. And I got Mongolian, which I was like, yes, I love Mongolian features. I've always
Mhm.
loved it. And then I got a lot of Japanese percentage. And
Whoa.
yeah, and that I had to unpack because just the
Yeah.
history of it, I was just like, what? And I thought I would have more Chinese blood. I don't even know if I had any Chinese blood. I don't think so.
What percentage was the Japanese?
I can't remember, but like double digits,
Wow. So like one of your parents could be close to half.
maybe. But that can only have happened through rape.
Right. No, exactly. That's why this is
Yeah.
really like Oh my God.
I mean, like my other friend, he got it too. He's Korean. And when he told me that, I was like, yo, I mean, how is this impacting you? And he's like, well, he's like, my sister said the same thing. He's like, but I think it might have been like for love. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like,
Mm.
you're much more of a romantic optimist than me. I mean, like,
Yeah.
maybe, but historically, I'm not sure.
Right. It's like what
Right.
conditions would have to have allowed for love.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and so that, and to me, it was like such a shock. Like, whereas I think with somebody like Leah, who's multicultural and her parents are much younger, it's like they came together like this is just who they are, right?
Right. By choice.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us who are older, when we do see mixed blood in our DNA, it's usually not by choice.
Yeah. Right. Wow. And then how that influences everything, right? Because it's like epigenetics too. So it's like your environment, your thoughts, all of those
Yeah.
things go into writing your
Well,
DNA.
it kind of made sense because I'm like, I was always drawn to like Japanese culture. Like my meditation practice is Zen, it's Japanese meditation, right? And like I love minimalism. I love the art of like there are certain things about Japanese culture that I'm drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's so wild. And then it goes all the way back to Africa, right? So they bring you all the
Right.
way back. And then I found out that where my people come from is like East Africa. And I'm like, well, that makes sense too, because I was always drawn to East African instruments for some weird reason. I was in a music shop
Mm-hmm.
once and I was playing these instruments, and I kept going to these instruments, and the shop owner is like, you're like drawn to specifically East African instruments. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I didn't know. I'm just like playing these things. So I think, yeah, maybe, it's in our jing, it's in our essence somewhere that we're drawn to that.
Mm-hmm. Right. But then I was thinking too, like how you came about with that mix. There was likely resistant trauma and not consent, maybe, I don't know. But then when it comes to Leah and how her makeup was made specifically, there was more, well, what we believe to be more choice and free will and those things. And then how that influences like our generation versus her generation, and the things that we've talked about, like how we are and how we orient with the world versus how they are and how they orient with the world is so different. And it's
Yeah.
very related to that whole lineage.
Even what she studies, gender studies. I'm like, did we even have this in school when I was in school? Because I would have maybe not. I was like such a nutcase at her age.
You probably wouldn't have thought, you probably wouldn't have known the value of it. You know what I mean?
No.
Not a knock on you, but just like knowing, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But well,
It
any
just
other,
reminds me of,
oh yeah.
oh,
No, go
sorry.
on, Tamsin.
Well, this reminds me of like, I was talking to a friend and we were talking about like scarcity mentality and softening. And we were talking about how like the younger generation is all about the soft life, like how to live a soft life. Right. And I think I'm like, I'm with it. I want to live soft. I think like you hit your 40s and you're like, whoa, once you hit your 40s, it's like you are closer to death than closer to life.
Right.
So you're like heading towards death, actually. So you got to like I think it changes your mentality and being like, okay, so now like that, now what do I want life to be? Whereas before that, it's like you're living life to the peak.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when you're heading towards death, you don't really have a lot more time. So it's like, what are you going to do with the rest of this time here? And so we were talking about like softening and the younger generation and scarcity mentality. And she was saying, she's like, I think our scarcity mentality comes from our genetic line. Because if you think about our parents were probably born during a war or right after a war, or grandparents too, grandparents. And so that is intergenerational trauma that now
Right.
and she's like, that's why our generation is all about the hustle and grind, because our
Right.
grandparents didn't have any of that. And that's passed on through our parents and that's passed on to us. So we can't understand what a soft life or why a soft life is ideal or like why you even want it. And we think of this generation as lazy, but it's like I feel like they are much wiser when it comes to
Wise.
this. And we
Yeah.
can't shake off our intergenerational trauma. And that's why we're grinding so hard.
Yeah. When I hear soft life, I think of Tao.
Yeah. It's way,
I
way,
mean, right. Exactly. Wu Wei.
way,
So,
way. Yeah.
yeah. So, as much as nature is actually chaotic and people forget about that, when we're going downstream, that is a type of softness that is going with the Tao. And there's that wisdom in there that we know so well. So I think that that's this younger generation is just on the return so much earlier.
Yeah.
Right. Because they weren't pulled away so far.
Yeah. And at
Yeah.
their peak, like the pandemic happened. So it's like they were forced to soften, right?
Right. Wow. All right, Tamsin. These are such good conversations. And I hope everyone else is enjoying them as much as the two of us are. So thanks again, everyone. And I'll see you again soon, Tamsin.
Bye.
Bye.